Hey, thanks for hitting play. I'm Jason, KM6FAK. And recently at one of our club meetings, we had a great presentation by a fairly new organization that really is doing a lot in emergency preparedness. It was not about radios or antennas, but rather how those things can play an important part during an emergency. A disaster can show up as fires, floods, tornadoes, earthquakes, blizzards, you name it, in which you might have to evacuate quickly. But what about the animals? What if you have horses, sheep, llamas, chickens, or whatever? Do you have the means to evacuate them? In most cases, once you leave the affected area, you won't be able to get back across the fire and police lines until deemed safe. This is where being part of an organization like CART that is sworn in with the Sheriff's Department can be a real animal lifesaver. I hope you enjoy the presentation.
All right. Thank you very much Kevin for inviting us to do this tonight. I had approached Kevin a little while ago just saying, if you guys are ever interested, we really, we'll talk about it in a little bit, but we really would like to try to recruit some more people to help us from the communication standpoint. But let me tell you a little bit. Evan is also here. Our group is about 35 people right now, doing all different things that we'll talk about. And I'm Jackie Post. I'm community outreach lead and also co-lead in our dispatch. And Evan is co-lead on the Scouts and Assistants, which we'll tell you about. And then also he's our liaison with the county. So Solano CART. CART stands for Community Animal Response Team. And these are springing up all over. There's a CART in Contra Costa County, Napa County, Butte County, Lake County, I don't know, I'm sure a bunch more. But all because there's not really anything about an organized way to help evacuate animals during disasters. So mostly we're talking large animals, but obviously if we go to a place and there's large animals, we're going to take the dogs and the cats and a lot of the other things too. You probably remember October 8th, 2017. The closest one here was the Allis Fire, and that's just a source about where it was and what was going on at the time. We were not around then. This was part of the inspiration for us getting organized, but we weren't here then. Some other pictures. I don't know how many of you had direct experience of being in any of these areas or were impacted by it at all, but certainly if you didn't see these yourself, you saw them on the news. We don't know whether, those horses got out. People had to be really creative in how they moved their animals. So on the lower one, you've got somebody just hooking their horses up to their pickup truck to get them out of there. They didn't have time or maybe the resources to have a trailer to get them into, so they're just getting them out any way they can. This was at the fairgrounds where a lot of the livestock was housed during the 2017 fires. That is no longer an option for us. That's gone. So at this point, we don't know exactly where we're going. The county says they have a plan, maybe, right, Evan? But we're not sure what it is yet. So we are still recruiting a lot of volunteer places. We've had some places step up to say they can take, 100 horses or whatever the need would be. A lot of the problems are people won't leave their animals. And it's one thing if you have a dog and you're trying to, toss them in the car or get the cat in the carrier. But when you're talking about livestock, if you don't have the time and the resources to get them out of there, a lot of people just say, I'm just going to stay put because I can't get my animals out. So this is stepping back a week from those 2017 fires. The week before, this is my place. There was a 100-acre fire that tore through. I'm in kind of next to Tim Ranch in the north part of the county. And my understanding is a beekeeper dropped a smoker, and it took off. We had 40, 50-mile-an-hour winds that day. This was at 9:30 in the morning. Hot, October, but hot. And we lost, thank heavens, no animals. The animals moved up the hill, but we lost structures, our well, all the electric stuff that goes to make a well work. Fried out the pumps, burned down all our fencing, 50-some trees. It was a pretty it was very scary for me because it happened so fast. That was the pump house. But CAL FIRE, all praise to them, got there and stopped it about 25 feet short of the house. And they did say, just as a warning to everybody, that because we had kept the area up, they were able to come in. They said if you hadn't, kept your defensible space, they wouldn't have even tried because the fire moved so fast. They didn't have a way to safely do it themselves. And at that time, I wasn't trying to get any animals out. The week later, we did a voluntary evacuation. But again, I wasn't prepared. We had nothing to get our animals out. We were lucky to have a couple friends that came by with trailers, and we threw I have 25 sheep, a llama, an alpaca, and a bunch of chickens, and we threw everything into trailers and trucks and got them out of there. That was for the Allis Fire. So from that fire, a lot of us in our area, particularly in Vacaville, decided that we just wanted to be like friends helping friends. And let's have a list of, a list started on Facebook. Our founder, Vicki Dawson, who would have liked to have been here tonight but is out of town, is on vacation. You can believe that? Takes a vacation. She started this list, and we just started putting down who had what to offer, who had trailers, who had trucks, who had places to put animals, all of that. But she kept pushing harder and harder to get us to be a more official organization. So in May, we were sworn in by the county as disaster service workers. So now we have an official status in terms of being able to get behind fire lines for those of the people in the group that want to be able to do that.
My background comes from, I worked up until May 3rd of this year. I did 28 years or so in animal services. So that was my background starting years and years ago in Oakland, then Peninsula, Berkeley, and then spent the majority of my career in Contra Costa County with animal services. So I come from that background in terms of rescue and, just animal handling that way. If I learned anything in those years, especially after the Hurricane Katrina thing, was that the reality is that when a disaster strikes, there's not going to be any governmental help for the regular citizens and their animals. It's just the system get overwhelmed so quickly. So it was really obvious, as everybody can probably remember after Hurricane Katrina, that the federal government was ready to help out in terms of grants and everything, but with the understanding that people need to train themselves to be able to help out. So I think you've seen in the news the most recent thing with the floods, the Cajun Navy, they called it. So there's what happens in a lot of times in disasters is you get a lot of spontaneous volunteers, which is from an ethical standpoint, wonderful thought process, and everybody's heart's in the right place. But then from the standpoint of actually being able to fight fires or deal with severe disasters, all those zones are very dangerous, and you can't just have anybody go into them. So when I was with Animal Services, I obviously had the opportunity, being affiliated with the county, to be directly involved with a lot of those rescue operations, and most recently with the Camp Fire up in Butte County. But as a citizen, this is a regular citizen, you're not allowed, obviously, to go into that. And so that sort of is another sort of reason that, as Jackie was saying about the impetus of something like CART groups, if you can get organized and get the backing of a county or some other entity, then you have a lot more power, for lack of a better description, to help out. And so as soon as they started talking about Solano CART, I was all gung-ho to get into it, especially since my retirement coincided perfectly with getting out of that government fiasco and into something a little bit more manageable, I'd like to think. So that's my background. And then onward with this. As you can see, obviously, some of the things that sort of what Jackie was saying about is that, especially when you're talking about other than dogs and cats, and certainly up here in this area, I recently moved up here about a year and a half ago. I lived in Oakland for 26 years. So urban versus rural areas. I grew up in Colorado in a really rural area, so I'm familiar with that. But that's one of the biggest things is in rural areas, you've got a much higher challenge on your hands in terms of getting your animals and your loved ones out. And again, there's less people to help you. So another reason why this is a good thing. The first responders, as Jackie said, will be able to help if they're able to, but they have to make their selections too. So defensible spaces, being prepared to get your animals out is going to be a big advantage. The reality is, just as it says, most counties absolutely don't have a plan for animals as much as you'd like to think they do. We're in the process of trying to establish. I'm the quote unquote county liaison, but I won't. I'm more than happy to tell you that's a name only. I really, it's very difficult to establish those relationships with something like the county because they're not familiar with it, and frankly, they really don't have the time to talk about rescuing horses and stuff like that. They have some pretty big people issues to deal with. So that's where the community-based and organized function really can help out. I was amazed when I moved up here and just driving around the neighborhood that I live up off of Midway and driving around seeing horses and llamas and goats and sheep. And then you look at the property where these animals live and you see maybe a Cutlass Supreme and a tractor. It's like, wonder what you're going to do if things really go south. How are you going to get all those animals off your property? They don't have a plan. They never needed one. But as you can imagine, it'll happen soon enough. This is on the left-hand side is one of the officers from Solano County, Christina Bradley. She is very enthusiastic. And on the right, Don Ryan, he's the leader of OES, so to speak. And for him to acknowledge a fledgling little group like Solano CART, 35 members, and to actually get sworn in as disaster service workers, I'm here to tell you, Contra Costa County doesn't have 35 sworn disaster workers doing that. So we're really lucky to have gotten the nod from the county at this stage, which is a great opportunity for people who haven't gotten involved yet and want to. We've got a great opportunity here to help out. And that's our founder and president, I guess we can call her, right? Vicki Dawson in the middle. And she would have liked to be here, but she's surfing in San Diego. All righty, so what we offer. Obviously, we had 35 some people get sworn in, and it is a process, not impossible to do. There's just some minor things you can go online. One of the things that the government likes us to do now is we take these online courses for incident command systems. FEMA offers these things for free. Just go online. It's a little tedious. It's kind of not too far away from some of the testing stuff that you're familiar with ham radios. There's like 3 different classes you can take online for that, maybe 45 minutes a piece. And recently we were told by the county they want us to take the Boy Scout, the Youth Protection Awareness Program, which is another online thing that the Boy Scouts of America has developed. And it's a liability thing for the county. With those 4 classes, you're good to go in terms of being qualified at this point in time what the county recognizes for disaster service worker. Our volunteers obviously have that. The one thing that, as Jackie had said, we've really recognized we have a wide variety within Solano CART. We have the evacuation teams, we have the communication teams, and within those we actually have separate divisions too. We've done about 3 or 4 different drills, and without a doubt we've realized that the communications part of it is almost, I would say, more important. I mean, again, I coming from my years working with the county and everything, I learned a long, long time ago, if you don't have communication, your rescue efforts really don't mean anything. We have a number of people just from what they're living up here are qualified, to haul animals. So we have a whole system set up. Jackie's been really instrumental in setting up a system of naming all our rig drivers with numbers, and so when a deployment happens, it's a big board. I think, is there a picture on it? Do we have a picture of it on the PowerPoint? Of the board? Yeah. Okay, so we'll get to that, and I'll show you, explain it that way. And we've been trying to do year-round training, whether it comes to animal handling, communications, just a wide variety of stuff. We've been lucky enough to have the assistance of Michael Payne, who's currently a volunteer fireman for Solano County. He's a veterinarian from Davis. He's got a lot of background that way, so he's been able to do a lot of great hazards training along with large animal stuff. And our membership is all over the board. It can be young, old, professional, non-professional, very learned, completely not learned. It doesn't matter. It's more the enthusiasm that gets you in the door, and then you get to pick the direction you go in. So these are just some pictures of stuff that we did. We did some simulated drills, and we just did some locations, went to their houses, and did sort of simulated evacuations. We didn't take their animals to different locations, but we went. We pretended. The one on the left is obviously. That was from the fire. What was the name of that one? The Rush Ranch fire. So we actually did get called, and those horses were actually evacuated. On the right-hand side was one of our simulations. Was that at your house, or was that somebody else's house who has a bunch of sheep? So, and as you can imagine, if you've never herded sheep, goats, or llama or alpaca before, It's a learning curve. It really is. So it's great fun, if nothing else. I mean, I'm telling you. And again, there's no requirements of age or gender or anything. If you're willing and able, it can be a real hoot. So Jackie very graciously offered her ranch, and we went through a few different things. So I just show you a quick video. I think it should play pretty well. This kind of gives you an idea of what one of the trainings was like.
Slow it, slow it, slow it, slow, slow, slow. Let them set.
Leave her.
Yep. Maybe.
Here she comes. She wants to come in.
No, so slow, 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 slow. Just let them go. They're going on their own. Let them go.
I'm going to let her get her back.
Here comes Eddie.
Incoming.
And that was the easy part. Her alpaca and llama were a whole nother deal, but that was fun in and of itself. So you can see the thing about this sort of thing is to practice this type of thing for a lot of people who haven't had any experience. If you can do it now with the sun, the blue sky in the background and everything, as opposed to a fire coming over the hill. There's a lot of little things. If you can get that down pat, and because the animals are obviously going to be acting a lot different too, and that's why it can really be a lot of fun. So, to the point of the presentation. Like I said, the communications part, I learned a long, long time ago that any type of rescue effort, any type of disaster response, if you don't have communications, you are out. I mean, there are no shortage of examples, and God forbid we even start talking about 9/11 and how communications didn't work so well that day either. So we've learned right away, we have the setup in terms of, well, I guess we'll get to it. Yeah, so our current evacuation stuff, these are the different sort of categories that we're working with. We have the rig drivers, obviously, the handling, the transport of animals. Now, within each of these categories, people can wear many hats. That's fine. The second would be sort of the scout team leaders and action planners, paperwork. That's more of the hands-on people of, who may have prior skill with animals or want to acquire skills with animals or familiar with any type of disaster relief work or evacuation stuff. We've broken down the evacuation groups into categories as well. So you have scouts that would go out to locations beforehand and look at, access points, egress, what type of animals, what hazards may or may not exist before you even try to bring any type of crew in there to do anything. And then the assistants are kind of the help the scouts out in terms of navigation of trailers. We've done a couple of different drills where we just gotten trailers into a big field and do a lot of backing up and parking and navigating around different areas. We even went up into the hills to a couple areas where we knew full well there wasn't going to get trailers in there, but on purpose tried to get people to get them in there. That was a really good experiment to learn what you couldn't do. As it says, looks good, but what are we missing? And again, what we realized that every single one of these drills and everything is the communications aspect. You can see kind of in the pictures, the upper left-hand corner is the barn where I live that's owned by a couple other members, and that's... I don't live in the barn. I live next door. I like the barn, though. I wouldn't mind. And we've set that up as our command center, so to speak, and that's where the dispatching takes place for now. On the right-hand side is an example, as I was telling you about the board that Jackie and others have developed a system. So 200 is just like a name for them. BP stands for bumper pull, and I believe, is that ST? I can't see. S for stock trailer. So there's different categories of what type of rig they have and what they're able to do. And so if deployed, then it moves across the board. It's a system of manipulating the magnetic markers across the thing to tell where they're at, who's deployed, who's on their way, what animals they have, things like that. An example in the lower left of different types of critters, pigs too, and then the sheep in the video you saw before. What we found was that we have some of the cute little family radio things. We thought that might be helpful, which sure, at the end of the driveway to the up the thing, that was fine to say, yeah, I see you at the end of the driveway, come on up. But anything past that, of course, now you've got a problem. You don't have any communications. And then on the other end of the spectrum, the county's not going to give us a bunch of $6,000-$7,000, radios for us to mess around with. So what do? Well, a few of us have decided, well, there is an option, and that's with ham radios. So we've started to look into that as more of our set communication system. But we, certainly I can speak for Jackie and I, are brand new to the whole ham radio world. Very exciting. And so that's where obviously we're thinking, you know what? Well, maybe there are some people out there who know a lot more than we do about it. We just recently did get our 501c3 status, so we're pretty excited about that. That'll help. Now we can do fundraising and all this other stuff, but it'll be helpful because nothing's for free anymore. And we only have you and I.
I think I counted, we have 8.
We have 8. We just recently had a few people who came in from other counties who are willing to do it. But as you can imagine, you can never have too many licensed operators. If you are a disaster service worker, and that's a matter of the swearing in is really just putting your right hand, if you go through those initial qualifications, putting your right hand in the air and just doing the oath, and that's really all it entails. The minimum idea, we're batting around a few different ideas. One was that we realized to have somebody in the vehicle that may go to an area, and keep in mind this could be pre-evacuation, so when it's not a mandatory evacuation, just something's happening that's nearby and people are thinking, you know what, I think I want to get my critters out of there. We've already met with half a dozen or more property owners, 13. She knows the numbers. And they have pre-evacuation plans. We have them in binders. We know what animals they have. We know how to get in and off of their properties. We know what's going to be needed to get those animals off, who to contact. So pre-evacuation plans for those things. But if we were there, we wouldn't have any way to communicate, obviously, back to the command center. So having dedicated radio personnel on the rigs really would be helpful. Now, if that jumped to a full-scale disaster where we're going behind county lines, needless to say, people would have to be authorized as disaster service workers to go across those fire lines. But that's what we're looking to have, obviously. It says here that your only job would be to stay in contact with our dispatch and county trackers so the rig drivers and scouts and assistants can concentrate. While that's true, wouldn't be any requirement that you must be able to run out and grab a pig too and run down the road. No. If you wanted to, however, that's certainly something that we want to say, hey, if you guys want to not just be radio personnel, but if you want to start to expand skills, and it doesn't have to just be pigs. If if you like small animals like dogs and cats, we got that too. But we also have another, just simply navigation is a big part of it. If you're like standing behind directing traffic type thing, it doesn't have to be hands-on for animals. There's no requirement in that regard. Yeah. The other thing is that we have, we've been doing now, it's only been, it's been a little over a year, and we've probably done half a dozen drills too. So just helping out with the drills, and that could be something as simple as from the at your own home, and that's just a communications thing, because we desperately need that help. We realized on a couple of the first drills that just being able to hold a cell phone while the person's calling, simulating, panicking about all the animals in my property, trying to write down what that's thing, and then communicate back out to rig. I mean, you all have been you know what dispatching's all about. It ain't an easy job at all. So we need help in that regards a lot. And fill in the comms gap. We put that in there. I think that was, it's that sort of insinuates we just need you for a little while and then we don't need you anymore. No, we don't mean it that way at all. We have big gaps in our communication now, so we need to fill them in permanently. And that's what we think. We think it could be a great blending marriage. I only say marriage because actually at 1:45 today, that's what I did. I got married today. And then I come here. You guys were that important. Yeah. I asked if it would be okay if I took off for a couple hours, and she said, go ahead. So she's, yeah. See, I married the right one, right? She's supporting this already. But we're just really grateful that we have an opportunity to, possibly, and even if it's not a matter of a lot of people volunteering for actual, hands-on stuff, we're just so encouraged that we have a resource opportunity, because Jackie and I have been blown away already at how much knowledge you guys all have about just the communications world, and it's going to make a world of difference in terms of being more efficient and just basically being able to help more people in a shorter amount of time. So we really appreciate the opportunity to present this to you. Thank you.
If you live here in Solano County, I'll put all the links down below in the description so you can follow along to their website, their Facebook group, and their contact information. Of course, they're always looking for volunteers in many different aspects. And if you're not in the local area, maybe that gave you some different ideas on what you could do in your local community and forming a group and really just being prepared for, well, whatever could come down your way.